Bienvenue. Les aventures de Frank et Ben. 6e série. Frank and Ben go on a picnic with Ruth and Sally. 5e histoire. Frank and Ben go on a picnic. Part 5. Stop it, Sally says to Ruth. Don't talk to Ben as if you thought he didn't have courage. He's full of it. It's just that it's of a different sort. People can be courageous in different ways. For example, artists can be courageous when they take risks in their work. Now look at Ben, who, as you know, is a budding writer. Did I tell you about the story of his I've just read? Even though it's science fiction, it doesn't follow the usual rules. It doesn't have the aliens from outer space being treated as monsters that we must defeat if the planet is to be saved. No, instead it shows the human beings being monsters by treating the aliens in a very cruel way, only because they're different and don't look the same as we do. Sally, don't get so upset. It's so like you to get worked up over nothing. Do you think I don't know that courage isn't simply to be measured by doing things like jumping out of a plane? Look at that scarecrow in the field, Ben shouts all of a sudden. You don't see too many of them nowadays. It is obvious to the girls that he's trying to change the subject. They stay silent for a few seconds while Sally, sitting in the front beside Ben, looks straight ahead. In the meantime, Ruth sits in the middle of the back seat. Finally, she leans forward and says to her sister, "Tell me about Ben's story. I'm really interested." "Do you want to tell it to her, or shall I?" Sally asks Ben while he continues to drive along the country road. "Go ahead, one of you," Ruth says impatiently. "I'm waiting for the story." "It's about these aliens who come to Earth from another planet," Sally starts off. "They're very advanced in their technology, but they don't have any weapons. They're totally pacifist. Indeed, they've come to Earth on a goodwill mission, but they've made a terrible mistake. They haven't done any research on what kind of people live on this planet. They've just assumed we're as kind and peace-loving as they are." "Wait a second," Ruth objects. "How could a race of very intelligent and sophisticated beings not do research on a planet they're coming to visit?" "It's not as hard to understand as you think," Sally answers. "It's only because people here are suspicious and fearful that they think others must be. But if you grew up on a planet where fear and suspicion don't exist, then you would have no reason to check out another planet before visiting it." "Well, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, go ahead." Unfortunately, the spaceship they come in is very scary looking and intimidating. It's shaped like a typical flying saucer, but big enough that it would flatten Los Angeles if it landed on it. It's first observed from the Earth when it lands on the moon near some mountain range. At first, the authorities try to keep it secret. They don't want to create a mass panic on Earth. However, somebody leaks the information over the internet, and before you know it, thousands of telescopes, big and small, are trained on the moon, and in particular the spacecraft. In only a few hours, the whole world knows about it. "Oh my God," exclaims Ruth, "that must create a stir." "More than a stir," answers Sally. "It creates the feeling that the end of the world is coming. No one knows what to do exactly. Some are prepared to give up right away. Others don't want to go down without a fight. Some want the Americans to send a nuclear warhead to the moon. Others think this is totally impractical and would only make the situation worse." "So what happens?" Ruth says breathlessly. "Tell me. I'm dying to know." The giant spaceship stays on the moon for 3 days without moving. It's enough time for the UN to convene and to draw up a plan for a coordinated system of defense. Nuclear weapons are ruled out except as a last resort. At the same time, every other form of weaponry is put at the disposal of a team of generals picked from the 10 most powerful countries in the world. Does the spaceship finally leave the moon? It does, and in such a mysterious way that nobody knows where it is until it's spotted by a bush pilot flying over Baffin Island. It's a very scary sight for him because it's now on our planet instead of the moon. And on top of that, the spaceship has these immensely long legs when it crawls over the Earth that make it look like a giant spider. Ugh! What happens next? NATO forces attack it and blow it to smithereens. Everyone is relieved and happy. Everyone is celebrating. Everyone is thanking God because they think the world has just been saved. But when they examine the remains of the spacecraft, they find out the horrible truth. It quickly becomes apparent that these voyagers from another planet were coming to Earth bearing gifts. Not only that, and this is the most horrible part, all the dead bodies in the spacecraft are children. "Wait," Ben interjects. "That's not quite right. The extraterrestrials in the spaceship only look like children." "Oh, what difference does it make?" Sally bemoans. "It's the sight of all these dead little bodies and all these sweet little faces that the world will have to remember."